Hello, everybody. This is Steve Yoder. Welcome to week 4 in Legal Studies 246 here in the summer of 2018 at the UAB Collat School of Business. I hope you had a safe and pleasant Memorial Day on the day that I'm recording this. It looks like maybe it might be a wet weekend thanks to a tropical depression down in the Gulf of Mexico, at least for those who live in Alabama. This week we are looking at the very important topic of constitutional law and how it affects business in the United States. First, thank you for submitting. If you submitted answers to the extra credit question from last week's topic of ethics in business decision making, the correct answer, which you had to give to me by Canvas mail message by Sunday night, I think it was May 27, 2018, was Trump International Hotel. Here's a look at this week's learning module, Constitutional Law. Peek inside the learning activities. There are 2 separate sets of narrated slides for you to look at there. This is a very broad topic. If there is to be any regulation of business by law in the United States, that law has to be consistent with the United States Constitution. The government that wants to impose that law has to have the power under the Constitution to do that. So it's very important that we look at exactly how the Constitution said that business could or could not be regulated in this country. And of course, that's a very interesting question because the Constitution was written in 1789 when business was very different than it is today. Here are the key parts of the Constitution that we will be looking at that can be used to base a law regulating business: the Commerce Clause, the power to tax and spend, the so-called Supremacy Clause is very important, and the Bill of Rights can also affect business. We know, as we will see, that businesses are considered persons for purposes of the United States Constitution to get many, not all, but many of the protections of the Bill of Rights. We will be looking at the Commerce Clause that has been used mostly successfully to regulate business beginning mainly in the 1960s. Another power that Congress has under the Constitution that's been successfully used to regulate business is the power to impose taxes, including on businesses. This is how the Affordable Care Act was ultimately found to be constitutional. President Trump, of course, is very opposed to the Affordable Care Act. Another very important section of the Constitution that is relevant when we look at how businesses are regulated is the Supremacy Clause. If a state attempts to pass a law that regulates a business, it may be that the Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution would say that that regulation is reserved only for the federal government in Washington, D.C. The Bill of Rights was passed several years after the original Constitution, and we all know that it gives us as individual human beings various protections, as you can see here. It also gives corporations many of these protections, as we will be discussing. Here's an example of how the freedom of speech comes into play with the regulation of a particular business, in this case the tobacco industry. We'll be talking about how the Supreme Court said that a requirement to have labels such as you see here did not violate a tobacco company's right to free speech. Freedom of religion can also come into play in the regulation of business. Some businesses may say that a law violates that business's freedom to practice religion in the way that it wishes to, and that has been successful recently, such as in the Hobby Lobby case that we will be talking about from 2014. The Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution is relevant. It says that the government, not private businesses, but the government must provide equal protection under the laws. If you go to work for, say, UAB or another public university, that law would apply to you, and it would say that if you wish to deny someone the equal protection of the law, say by favoring African Americans or females over Caucasians or males in the admission process at your university, you must strictly scrutinize that. It might be possible, but it has to be very carefully looked at to make sure that the purpose is a compelling government interest. Donald Trump, we don't know what he'll do here. He's pretty busy in other things, including today canceling the summit that had been scheduled for June 12th. I'm pretty sure that he disagrees with decisions that allow universities to favor one race over another. Please be sure that you read all announcements in Canvas. Set your notification preference so you get all of them. That's the only way that extra credit opportunities are provided. Finally, here's a look at the Canvas calendar. We're almost in the month of June. The next assignment that is due are the two assignments that you see for Sunday night, June 3rd, 2018 at 11:59 p.m. There is another assignment due on June 10, and there is a whole slew of things due on Friday, June 15, including, very importantly, the first exam.